So can you see us? Can you hear us? We're just waiting for the sound check to complete.
Doesn't know, just directly on YouTube, the comments. Couldn't do it at the same time as it looks staged, you know.
Please.
All good?
Yeah, all right. So I guess we can get started. So today's AMA is about the latest blog post from the research team, which describes the NFT module that we are proposing for the Lisk ecosystem. So that module is designed to handle the base functionality that are needed for NFTs and to have NFTs on any of your sidechains. So in the blog post, we start by describing what are the options offered by the modules. So you have two main transactions, which are transferring NFTs to other people on the same chain, and a cross-chain transactions, which is used to transfer your NFT to somebody on another chain. We also quickly describe the state store that is used by the NFT module, and maybe most importantly, the APIs. So APIs are the public functions of the NFT modules, which can be used by other custom modules to interact with NFTs. And following this, we have, in my opinion, the most interesting part of the blog post, which is describing a custom module using the NFT. And this custom module was designed by Alessandro here, and he talked about it in Lisk.js, at Lisk.js. There is a YouTube video of his presentation, and it's a piracy chain, which has nothing to do with pirating things on the internet, but it's actual pirates. He made super cool pixel art, and you can hire the pirates on that chain. You create a group of pirates, and then you can send the group to another chain to try and fight other pirates and steal their treasures, and then you bring the treasures home. Your pirates get stronger as they visit more and more chains in the ecosystem, and even though it exists only on paper, I think it's a super cool idea, and maybe one day Alessandro will port it to an actual module and an actual sidechain that can exist for real.
We'll see.
We'll see. What are your plans for this?
My plans is to wait. I'm looking forward for the release of interoperability, and then just play around, I guess, with the SDK. But I think everybody is aware of what NFTs are. Just maybe for the few of them that didn't read the blog post and still connected to the Ask Me Anything. Basically, NFTs are the counterpart to fungible tokens that are identified by a unique ID, and in this sense are unique throughout the ecosystem. And in general, they are the hot topic, probably the hottest topic in the blockchain space, 2021. And I guess a very interesting question in general would be, what is Lisk take on NFTs? Like, why do you think the NFT module provides something unique to that is specific to the Lisk ecosystem? Why is it different from other NFTs in other blockchain projects and so on?
Mm-hmm. So in that regard, I would say that we didn't try to make the NFT module as original or as different as possible, but we tried to make it as useful and as easily integrable to your sidechain as possible. So we really aimed for convenience rather than just having random complexity that only would help a few sidechains. And so the main point of why this NFT module exists and why we wrote it was to have a common understanding of what are NFTs throughout the ecosystem. The point being that if everybody uses the same module, then you can transfer the NFTs from sidechain to sidechain. If there exists a marketplace, you know that the NFTs you create on your chain can be sent to the marketplace to be exchanged. Whereas if you don't have such a common standard or common module, it can get super complicated, super messy. Because I will just use a slightly different schema or just some small things which can be, in the end, like have the exact same behavior, but just are slightly different and then don't work together at all. Like you basically can't talk to each other. Yeah. And just to go back on your analogy between fungible token and non-fungible tokens, it's funny because I talked about this yesterday evening with my girlfriend, and one of the good differences that I came up with was for concert tickets. You know, you have a concert where you just buy a ticket which grants you an entry, and you can get in, and then that's it. Every ticket is the same, and it doesn't matter if you come with your ticket or another ticket. Whereas with NFTs, it's more akin to a concert ticket where we have seated spaces. So on your ticket, you have a seat, and your ticket gives us access to this seat specifically, and you can't exchange two tickets and expect to have the same viewing experience.
You hope that they didn't sell the same seat twice.
Hey, yes, you do that.
No, that's a very good analogy, I think. Just in general, as for any other past Ask Me Anything, please ask us questions in the chat directly on YouTube, or you can ask questions also on Discord. I think these are the two channels. If you have other means to ask questions, of course, that would be a surprise, but still a question. I don't know, maybe we can actually check if there are already questions coming up. My laptop died, actually. So. Okay. Yes, so there is, for instance, a first question about actually interoperability with the NFTs from other blockchain platforms, such as Ethereum. So, of course, NFTs in Ethereum are very successful, can be very expensive. They're part of the, I would even say, global discourse, like my father asked me about NFTs at some point, which is meaning that you really reached everybody. So, what is the stand of interoperability with the NFTs on the Ethereum platform, say, with the future and so on?
So, in this regard, I would say that NFTs are not more or less complicated to breach than regular tokens. Because, as we talked about in the past, if you want to breach, let's say, ETH tokens from the Ethereum platform to the Lisk ecosystem, you will need to create a bridge where the ETH is locked on the Ethereum chain, and then you have some kind of wrapped ETH in the Lisk ecosystem, which can be transferred and used. And if you send it back through the bridge, you get your ETH back on the Ethereum chain. And I would say exactly the same thing can happen with NFTs. And the NFT module that we are proposing is totally suitable for this. So you would have a bridge chain with a contract on the Ethereum platform, which would lock the NFTs. And then the bridge chain would release a copy of this NFT on the Lisk ecosystem, which can be used and transferred, traded, whatever you want. And then when you transfer the NFT back through the bridge, you get it back on the Ethereum chain. Right.
So the general protocol, let's say, would not differ from other assets that you may want to bridge between.
No,
Lisk ecosystem.
Maybe a technical question that we have here. What happens if you create an NFT on one chain and then you modify it on another chain?
Right. So just to summarize again, basically NFTs in the Lisk ecosystem have, I would strip it down to the bare bones, two main properties. One is the unique identifier that identifies the NFT. This identifier as, let's say, some part that is related to the NFT was actually created, and another part that instead relates to the specific NFT. And NFTs in the Lisk ecosystem have a very generic attributes property, which, as Maxime was pointing out before, it's very simply some storage from the NFT point of view. It's just a property when you can dump whatever information you may need to process a custom logic. This property, of course, can be completely empty, in which case this NFT is just basically the unique identifier, which is more akin if you want to, a bare NFT in the Ethereum protocol. Of course, in the Ethereum protocol, you can always have a custom logic as well related to an NFT. But since it's part of the common processing of the NFT module, of course, it could be that the native chain where the NFT is created thinks that these properties should be something, and when the NFT is moved to another sidechain as part of the interoperability protocol, then this NFT is modified in the sense that this attributes property is modified. Mm-hmm. And this is actually, is not a bug, it's a feature, as you always say, because this allows you to actually process custom logic. So NFTs that are created on a certain chain can be, integrated easily with other chains, and these other chains can modify them and, implement some logic on top of the original logic that was created on the native chain. But of course, this is not always wanted necessarily by the native chain, and here we're giving complete freedom as for the custom logic defined by the developers to actually check these attributes property when the NFT is moved around. So when it leaves the chain, when it comes back, you can compare it to the previous value, and you can do whatever you want. You can disallow completely modifying NFT in other chains, or you can allow it only to specific chains and so on. Mm-hmm. So this plays back to what you were saying before. We just set up the minimum features on top of which developers can define any custom logic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for NFTs, as is also the case for fungible token, the native chain somehow has the final word. Like if I create an art module on my chain and I create NFTs on my chain, then those NFTs can move around the ecosystem. But if you want to buy an NFT on another chain, it's always a good idea to just have an API call, an RPC call to the native chain to see, okay, is that NFT escrowed to the correct chain, and is that NFT, has it been modified somehow? Is somebody trying to trick me?
Right.
It's kind of like, if we go back to my concert analogy, if I try to send you a ticket number 32, and on it, I modified the seating. I wiped out the bad seat and I write like seat 1A, like in the middle. Well, you can always call the organizers and ask them, like, is ticket 32 actually that amazing seat? And then the organizer can tell you yes or no.
So the organizer is kind of allowed to modify the seat, but other people not, which makes sense. But you said a keyword. Right now you said escrow, right?
Yeah.
Because there are these processes that allow to enforce some rules with interoperability, the rules with which these NFTs can move around the ecosystem.
Exactly. Yeah, when I create an NFT on my chain, as you said, we have complete freedom. I could say, okay, the NFT is not allowed to leave the chain at all. But that wouldn't be so much fun. So probably you want to allow the NFT to go to other chains, but you need to know where the NFT is to avoid somebody tricking you. And so when the NFT leaves your chain and goes to another chain, well, you will write down in the NFT store that this NFT went to this other chain, and when he left, those were his attributes. Mm-hmm. And so whatever happens, once the NFT comes back, you can check, okay, is it coming back from the correct chain? Because that's very important. And you can check the new attributes and see if something needs to be done.
Right.
Like, let's say you have an art NFT, maybe you don't want anything to change. And so when the NFT comes back, if anything was changed, you just overwrite it and you put back the original attributes. But maybe you have, let's say, a Pokemon chain or Pokemon module, and you're very happy that if the Pokemon comes back with 1 or 2 levels more, you're like, okay, this is normal, I accept whatever is coming back.
Right. Especially if the chain where it was escrow shares the Pokemon module. Okay. So this was the example also for the piracy chain.
Yeah.
Since sevens. And so you said this about escrowing, and as you mentioned, you keep track of the chain where the NFT moved, but you don't keep track, of course, of the movement of the NFT within the chain where it was. So for instance, if I send an NFT to an exchange, then it could change hands a lot of time. You don't care as long as it comes back from the exchange chain.
Yeah. So we have a small technical question about NFTs on the main chain. Can you have NFTs on the main chain?
Right. I'm gonna close my laptop since it's
Easy answer here.
Easy answer? No, because every chain, every Lisk blockchain defines, as you know, the modules that it supports. In particular, the main chain does not support NFTs at all, so it does not register the NFT module in a node, and so you cannot send NFTs to the main chain. That is not to say that you cannot send NFTs through the main chain. If you want to send NFTs from sidechain A to another sidechain B, of course they would be routed by the main chain, so they would go through the main chain, and that's all good and Gucci, but you cannot store them from the main chain. On the other hand, on a sidechain, you can send NFTs if they support the NFT module and if they support the NFTs that you're trying to send them. Yeah. So that's also very easy to specify.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question from YouTube. What excites you the most about NFTs, and how is Lisk special or different from others in this specific area?
I have an answer to that.
Well, you can start.
Well, maybe just an answer at the top of my head. Of course, NFTs are supported by basically every blockchain platform. What I like in our specific implementation, again, I'm going to stress this, is that the base protocol is very easy. Like, it's very simple. There are very little rules, just about keeping track NFTs throughout the ecosystem and so on. And the complex rules that you want to put on top of that, they will not be specified as part of the NFT model. They will be specified as part of a custom model, which is to say, you separate the logic, the complex custom logic you want, from the base interoperable NFT logic, and you want these different modules to interact. We have a very clean interface to interact between the NFT module and custom models. And I think in general that's a good idea, because there are some stuff that you want to do with NFTs, cross-chain transfer, and so on, that you want to be sure that you're doing right. You don't want to have bugs there. These will be SDK modules that we provide with the SDK. They're going to be vetted. We're going to spend a lot of energy and time on them to be sure that they work as they're supposed to do. Custom modules, a developer should put also a lot of effort and time to be sure that it's bug-free. But of course, you can always rely that at least the basic properties, interoperability and so on, are going to really work as they're supposed to do. And then you can play around, right? Then once that's done, you can write your custom logic, you can break everything, you can have a lot of bugs, that's fine. Test it on testnet, you register your chain and do it like that. But at least you know that you're limited what you can do, what you can do wrong, let's say.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And going in that direction, providing this module, if you don't want to go crazy and do weird things with your NFTs, allows you to very easily have a safe way of handling NFTs. If you just have basic functionalities, you can be really set up in a few clicks and not a lot of implementation. And then, like you said, if you want to go crazy, you can try and make it much more complicated. But what excites me the most about NFTs, well, I think in terms just of blockchain, they are one of the core objects that you need in your blockchain to really cover most use cases. Like fungible tokens are nice, but there are so many use cases for which you need NFTs, and having this base module as one of the building blocks of the Lisk ecosystem is really good.
Right, because it's really a simple idea if you think about it in terms of fungible tokens. To me personally, we still needed to find a killer app for NFTs, like not at least, I mean, in the blockchain. but that's it, right? Once you have it and you can do it, it's very simple to actually explore and try and get your hands dirty. Then maybe the killer app will come eventually.
Yeah.
I don't think the killer app is right now selling images on a blockchain, for instance, but you never know. Maybe.
Okay, so we have a few more questions. One that is not NFT related, maybe we come back to it a bit later. And one about NFTs. What is something you envision for NFTs that is still not possible today, but would be super cool? Also, were you surprised with its growing popularity? So maybe I can start answering here about the growing popularity. Was I surprised? Yes. There are a few NFTs out there who try to really do some things. Like you can buy some NFTs which have then interactions with other parts of the blockchain. And I think those are very exciting and we'll see more and more use. But there have been a lot of NFTs which were just generated just by copy pasting the specification on Ethereum and basically didn't bring anything to the blockchain space, and some of them were very expensive, and that sort of surprised me a bit.
I mean, yes, surprises, but on the other hand, you don't get surprised anymore. But yeah, as Maxime said, to me, it's actually difficult to say right now what a future use case may be. But again, since the idea is so simple, like you want to, attribute to property, whatever that means, even not the common sense of the word, to a certain entity of a unique asset. The idea is so simple that I really believe that there must be some useful use case. Maybe it will have to come with a lot of complex logic on top. Maybe we need to come with a off-chain world. But I really think that since they are simple, the possible application.
And this is something really that drove the design of this interoperability module, because we don't want to restrict those use cases. We try to keep it as simple as possible, as flexible as possible, because actually we don't know what will be like you said, the killer app with NFTs. Okay, so if you have more NFT related questions, please ask them. I will ask the non-NFT related one right here. Block rewards seems too high, the inflation rate is too high, and delegates mostly don't do much except forging. Is there a possibility for reducing it more in the future? So I can partly answer this, or I can answer the part that I know. The inflation rate is too high. I don't think that's true. If you compare Lisk to other blockchains, we are rather on the lower end of inflation, especially, I don't want to cite any other project because I didn't check the numbers beforehand, but I'm sure among the top projects, we have one of the lowest inflation rate. Secondly, and this is not any financial advice, but if you think that delegates don't do enough, there are some delegates who share the reward on the main chain. You can vote for them, and they have also redistribute the rewards.
And in general, if you believe that it's economically viable to be a delegate, which should be, but it's more viable than it's supposed to be, then you should become a delegate.
Yeah, of course. With the new standby delegates, you don't need a lot to start your node, and if it's so profitable, then we encourage you to do it. Everybody who runs a node and becomes a delegate helps the decentralization of the network, and it's good for the network.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. Going on the question of is there a possibility to reducing the block reward? This is not in our hands at all. Like as part of the research team, we try to evaluate the protocols on a technical level, and the question of is the block reward too high or too low is not really relevant on the technical level. It's a economic incentive.
I mean, we did analyze it in terms of, as you said before, comparing to other projects, and it's already on the lower end. And then it's a very complex question, of course, because it brings a lot of different pieces together, right? Like on one hand, you want to secure the protocol as much as possible, so you should actually reward your delegates so that the equilibrium where you find how much people stake to actually become a delegate is quite high. On the other hand, of course, you don't want to deflate the value of the token. And again, at this stage, we're not thinking about changing the reward schedule.
Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't be enough. So yeah, I have this small question here that we touched upon already, but maybe we can say a bit more. Can any custom module interact with the NFT module? And maybe we can extend a bit the question of, can my custom module do whatever it wants with the NFT module? And here I would say that the NFT module is designed to be fairly lean and fairly permissive, but you can't do anything you want. You have a few functions, public functions to play with that you can call, and using these functions, any custom module can interact with the NFT module and can do basically what it wants, but you can't bypass those functions.
Like for instance, even with the fungible token module, you cannot create tokens out of thin air, or rather, you can, but you're always gonna do it via the public functions, the APIs of the token or NFT module.
Mm-hmm.
So that you know that if you do these things, you're gonna do it in the right way, especially in regards with the interaction with the store, the database, and so on.
Yeah, exactly. Because you want to keep the consistency of the whole store. Yeah.
So, for instance, if you always use these public functions, you're guaranteed not to have the same NFT assigned to two addresses, for instance. We're not going to duplicate NFTs. We can only exchange them, move them.
Yeah. Small question here. Is it not too early to speak of NFTs before interoperability? How can NFTs benefit Lisk at its current state?
Well, the research team is kind of ahead in terms of research compared to the SDK, in the sense that we work on specifying the future protocol. And 2021 was the big year of interoperability. We spent a lot of time researching Brighton Lips improvement proposals that were published. And after the interoperability research phase, now the interoperability solution has been completely specified. Now we're working on new things. And one of these is the NFT module, together with other modules that we researched and specified, such as the fungible token module. Interoperability module was also a module, of course. So yeah, it's not early, and it will be released together with interoperability, so that from the get-go, NFT will, be present within the ecosystem.
Yeah. We have more questions coming. I hear in my little earpiece. Okay, so a small question about the NFT space, and maybe we have a different opinion here. Well, what products or areas do you consider overrated or maybe underrated?
With respect to NFTs
yeah.
specifically?
Yeah.
This is like honest opinion, and then you get excited. But I do think that many very valuable transactions were, I do believe, I have the impression that a lot of these transactions were actually, let's say, inflated or maybe not completely transparent, for instance. So I believe that, like what I tried to say, that maybe these NFTs that got sold for millions and so on, maybe they weren't really sold for millions. I don't know. I don't have any proof or anything. It's just an impression. So in that sense, the whole, market, for sure, I would say that it's inflated, the NFT market, in the sense that I don't believe that there are NFTs that are actually valued millions by anyone right now. But of course, I also do understand that would be considered an asset as buying the Mona Lisa. The difference, I guess, would be that you're the only one allowed to watch the Mona Lisa if you keep it in your, in your living room. But there are a lot of copies around, so that's really different, and so on. So in that sense, the marketplace, I do believe that it's a bit overrated in this sense. Underrated, again, I think there is potential there for some good idea that would actually bring a lot of value to the whole blockchain space. In general, again, finding the way of using them for something meaningful rather than just value holders, let's say.
Yeah, definitely. I think I would fully agree with this. As I said, NFTs will be used, I'm sure, to hold somehow more meaningful assets in our lives than some random, I'm not saying random as a pejorative term, but really random piece of art, as in generated randomly. Because we have, so with the fungible tokens, we're moving from actual coins and bills to decentralized and electronic currencies or ways of exchanging wealth. And I'm pretty sure that we will also see the same kind of transfer from physical possessions or from like insurance contracts or housing contracts or things like this. Those will also move to the blockchain. And once this is done, and I think that has started with some opinion in some areas, then there will have true value and those will totally not be overrated. But for now, it's true that the market is a bit looking for itself, maybe. And, so how would one explain NFTs to your grandmother? Alessandro.
To my grandmother.
To your grandmother.
I think one should start talking about blockchains probably as a mean of decentralizing, and I know that's also something that you would have to define, but decentralized consensus. So maybe I would start by saying, by drawing an analogy, say, and my grandma probably has a house, and she knows that there are some rules in place that protect her ownership of the house. And these rules are just something she believes in, right? Like the fact that if somebody tries to break in, then the police will help her defend her property in this case. So the fact that the state, I can get it into a branch of, but the fact that the state and in general the common consensus would protect her ownership rights is just something that she believes in, and rightly so, because likely that's what's going to happen. And in a sense, it's an NFT corresponds, holding an NFT corresponds to holding a house where the consensus, rather than enforced by the state, the government, is enforced by a collection of people she will never meet, and she doesn't understand how they would do it. But I would tell her that with the power of math, you can put economic incentives to enforce this. And yes, so I would draw an analogy like it's just a different form of consensus. And there are economic incentives to enforce this consensus that guarantees that she can hold this property, and everybody believes that this property actually belongs to her. I don't know if it was
a good one. For my case, I think I would use my concert analogy because I think it holds quite a few of the important features that we want from NFTs. And one of the critiques I always hear from my parents, or not so much grandparents, because but is that they say, oh, if you come with your phone and your NFT to the concert, what what guarantees you that you're going to get in and get your seat? And here the answer is, well, if you get there with your paper ticket, what guarantees that you will get in? And there's kind of this image that having something on paper is more tangible and more real than having it on a blockchain. And I think that's where I will spend most of my time explaining like why whatever is on the blockchain is as real as what you can have in your pocket. And that, like you said, the incentives are put in place such a way that nobody wants to steal your one concert ticket. I mean, not all delegates will together decide to steal your one concert ticket at the cost of crashing the whole blockchain.
Right, exactly. So I think there are different kind of incentives, right? If you have your ticket on paper, there are some, infrastructures in place that protect you against, malicious concert organizers. Like I can sue you if you don't let me in, I guess, and get my ticket price back. And instead, in the case of NFTs, the incentives are rather economic one, because if you violate the protocol, you get punished, or straight up you cannot.
Next up, we have something that is not fully a question but stated as an opinion. A research activity could be to map out which critical ecosystem components should be there. This might encourage devs to not only build dApps, but also supporting tools and business models. So I'm not sure I fully understand. So I think what is asked here is that what we could do is research what tools are missing in our ecosystem and try to encourage the community to implement and provide those tools. And I think that's definitely something that...
It's a great idea. And if I can mention it, like you probably know about the Lisk grant program, and it doesn't only encompass blockchain applications, because as you mentioned, there are other parts of a healthy ecosystem that are important, like, I don't know, Block Explorer, we already have one, just giving an example, or other tools that could be used to facilitate interoperability and whatnot, like some new common models that we didn't research and implement in the SDK, but that we think are going to be useful to many blockchain applications. So just the model, not the application itself. And if you have a good idea, just check out the Lisk grant program, apply. We're receiving quite a bit of applications, and getting successful. If I at this point I should give you the link out of the top of my head, but I guess you can go to lisk.com and move around a bit until you find it, or just Google Lisk grant. That should work as well. And apply.
Yeah. Next up, somebody is saying that the trends in the space seems to change and shift often. Are NFTs here to stay, and why? And here, maybe what I would say here is that indeed trends are very much changing and very quickly, but I don't think it's related to NFTs, to the question of NFTs versus no NFTs. We see a lot of NFTs that gain value and then lose values, but it's not the concept of NFTs that becomes obsolete. I think in that regard, the concept of NFTs will stay relevant in the same way as the concept of fungible token will stay relevant, because you can do many things with them. But for sure, you have NFTs that are very valuable today that will not be valuable tomorrow. But as a concept, it's definitely something that's here to stay. And now the industry is also moving toward like GameFi and the assets that you can receive while playing games. And a lot of them are done while playing NFTs. If in 5 years we move away from GameFi and we go to insurance fi, and again, for the insurance.
We like insurance.
Yeah, you have insurance. Then we will still use NFTs and we will still use the NFT module of the Lisk blockchain.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I agree with you.
I think it's really like a tool and a base layer of things, and not it's here to stay. Yeah.
And it's a fairly old quotation marks. Nothing is really old in this space, but it's a fairly old idea, right? Like,
Definitely.
Been around 2017. at least, I guess.
Oh, somebody is reacting to your invite to the Lisk grant program. So if you're the next, if you were, because so we have a rotating system, but if you were the next one to judge Lisk grant application, what kind of applications do you like to see there? Would you like to see there?
In general, I think I'm allowed to share this, but in general, I think applications that are very well thought and prepared from every point of view really, are a bit over the others. Like when I say from every point of view, I think about the technical aspect, which is usually what I personally participate in judging, but also the economic aspect, like the product viability. You should think about, for instance, why do you think people would want to use this product? Why they need it? How you can develop it to become something from which you can make money. That's also an important aspect. Like, how can you monetize your project? And of course, the technical aspect we sound. It's always a prerequisite. And in general, if you spend time preparing the application, you put love into it, if you really believe in the idea, I think this always shows.
Definitely. Yeah, this is probably the most important one. Use the blockchain in a meaningful way and have an application which is well thought and well designed. Definitely. And the last one, which I'm not sure we will fully answer, is there is a meme where people ask the question, should I buy a house or a JPEG? JPEG, sorry. Do you consider NFTs that serious of a financial opportunity? So I think we've actually answered that question in our...
It depends on how many houses you have. If you go from 0 to 1, I mean, I guess I can give this, general life coaching. I would buy a house. But if you go from 1,000 to 1,001, and you can buy an NFT, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe a GIF. Right.
But GIF is the one where you don't know how it's pronounced, right?
Yeah, exactly.
GIF. I'm not gonna start the war now.
Very well. Thanks, Alessandro.
Thank you, Maxime.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. And we hope you enjoyed the blog post, and we will see you soon in a future AMA.